It likely comes as no surprise, given some of my Snek tries, that I'm actually a big fan of old-school Maxis games. Prior to the company being absorbed into the all-consuming black hole that is EA, I had just about every one you could name, between SimCity and its mini sequels and spin-offs, to the more obscure like Sim Farm, Sim Tower, and yes, today's title, SimAnt. In fact, I found these simulation games very educational, as Maxis often included robust tutorials for each game, talking about the thing being simulated and what you'd need to know to make the most of it. I probably owe my childhood fascination with bugs to this game, in fact. And honestly, it's not a bad educational tool in that respect, as not only does it have a great in-game encyclopedia, haha, but having a firm understanding of the nature of ants will help your gameplay experience to a certain point. Join me for a closer look, where we'll put it under a magnifying glass, the SNES port of the Maxis title, SimAnt. Greetings everyone, this is the hipster Snek, and today we'll be looking at the 1993 port of SimAnt for the Super Nintendo. See, the game originally launched on DOS machines in 1991 with the full title SimAnt the Electronic Ant Colony, and it got ports and re-releases for Windows 95, Macs, PC 98, and many other machines. It was actually met with generally very positive reception, and for a time it even outsold SimCity itself. But I have a hard time getting old PC games to run on my current potato, so we're going to play this version instead, and do some compare and contrast later in the review for those who are curious. I actually grew up playing both versions, so I am, in fact, an authoritative source. So, what did Will Wright bring to the table this time? A simulation of the most numerous creatures on the planet, the eusocial insect known for its distinct caste system and fascinating life cycle. That's right, ants. Alas, there was never a Sim Bee, so no quoting the Bee movie this time, gang. To start, the SNES game has a fantastic presentation overall. Don't get me wrong, I loved my old PC back in the days of Windows 3.11, but there is something nostalgic about old chiptune MIDIs played by hijacking other components and making them bip and boop in some sequence, dimly resembling music. Just that the SNES does that way better. The graphics are great, giving the player a top-down view when it's on the surface world, where you can move in 8 directions, and a side-facing 2D cross-section that is the nest. Freedom of movement remains essentially the same, but the change in perspective is obvious. The ants look like ants, though made a bit cuter, with simplistic static sprites that rotate to signify movement, and a lot of attention paid to the overworlds in particular. The world actually changes depending on where you go, with dirt, rocks, pill bugs, and antlions dotting the landscape if you're outside, alongside sports equipment like discarded golf clubs. And while inside the house, carpet, tiles, and electrical outlets are the order of the day. There's a variety, even though some things, like the wolf spider or the caterpillars that spawn infrequently, will remain a nuisance no matter where your colony calls home. Oh yeah, quick warning, if you're arachnophobic, this probably isn't the game for you. Or maybe it is, given that you can kill the spider and proceed to rip it apart and eat it. So you have that going for you, I guess. Anyhow, it all looks great, so let's talk about audio next. To start, the game's soundtrack is amazing, like, maybe better than this game rightfully deserves. That sounds backhanded, but some standouts include things like the intro sequence song and the music that plays in the final level of scenario mode, the Autumnal Forest. It's almost hauntingly beautiful, which is a weird thing to say about this game in particular. The sound effects, oh dear lord, they went out of their way to make ants as cute as possible. I'm not joking. When born, your playable yellow ant, which makes them stand out from the black ants that make up your nestmates, has a little hello soundbite, and when fed by a nestmate, in the process called trophallaxis, where one ant brings up undigested food from its second storage stomach to feed another, she greets it with a thank you clip. And she sounds like a squeaky toy when she walks. Oh, you might be wondering why I keep saying she. Well, that's because in any given ant colony, the vast majority of the occupants are females. Mind, sterile females and capable of breeding on their own, though exceptions do exist. See, when the nest is a healthy size and can afford to do so, Usually in late spring or early summer, the nest produces winged ants, called elates, and they pair off and fly away from their home nests hoping to start new successful colonies elsewhere. Only some winged ants are male, designed exclusively to mate with a new queen so she can hopefully go on to found her own nest afterward. So when the new queen finds a good spot, she'll land, shed her wings as seen in the game's intro cinematic, and dig a nice little hole for herself to call home. In fact, her back muscles that used to control her wings will oftentimes atrophy and dissolve, becoming a soupy broth she'll feed to the first generation of her workers, called nanitics, until they mature and are able to start foraging and working in the colony on their own power. And this all goes one step further. Some ants are even polygynous or have more than one queen per colony, though that's definitely the exception and not the rule. You could do that in the PC game with use of cheat codes and add multiple queens in each nest, but in the SNES game it's one nest, one queen. That's the way it is. In fact, in this game, I'm not even sure what species of ants we necessarily are playing as, just that they're black in color and likely, given that Maxis is an American company, it must be a breed native to North America. So if I was pressed, I would assume it's the black garden ant Lasius niger, and our enemy, dastardly red ants, which stand in the way of food and real estate, are likely representative of fire ants, an obnoxious and invasive species to North America. Also, that annoying human who keeps mowing his lawn like every 10 minutes? Seriously, this human needs more to do with his life, but one enemy at a time. Anyway, a curious fact about the SNES port in particular is that it's one of the few titles that actually worked with the mouse peripheral. Yeah, I can't think of too many that did, but honestly, it's not intuitive and I can't say I recommend it. In fact, a lot of elements of the PC version are still present here, with you issuing commands via a cursor you move around with a control pad, and using A and B as essentially a left and right click command. The game is essentially menu-driven, with you summoning your nestmates or dismissing them as you need them. This is actually true to real-world ant behavior, and honestly, you can only do so much when you're flying solo anyway. Not only will you find strength in numbers, you'll find convenience. In quick play and full game modes, we'll start in the front yard furthest across from the human's house, and it won't be long at all until a camp of red ants move in across the way. Thus, our war begins. And there is plenty to worry about, especially in the early days of the colony. Food in this game is represented with green orbs. I've heard these compared to green peas, but the instruction booklet says it's just a representation of something or anything an ant would or could break apart and take home, green peas or no. Especially as when you swarm caterpillars and spiders, they'll break into green bits too. A thing to bear in mind is that the placement of these green piles is randomly decided after a certain amount of peas gets too low. Meaning sometimes you'll basically just get the food dropped on you, and sometimes the red ants get easy pickings. This pretty much boils down to luck. Actually, I should just tell you now that you'll be hearing that bit as I explain things a lot because lots of stuff in this game happens just randomly. Like the big clumsy mammal who lives in the house may go out and play in his yard, including stamping around and crushing you and your siblings underfoot like a big dumb clumsy ape. He'll also mow the lawn, which in addition to big clumsy feet, also means a random percentage of ants will get plucked off the overworld area and sucked into whirling blades of doom. This is decidedly random when it's all too late for you to even do anything anyway. So, luck be with you, I guess? Sometimes he'll also just get bored and do this in rapid-fire succession just because. I don't know, like I said, maybe he just needs a life. Anyway, he's a nuisance, but we'll need to deal with threats in order, so let me tell you some facts about ants. They're fiercely territorial to the point of self-destructive overconfidence. Two colonies end up too close, you have an ant war that basically doesn't end until one or the other has ceased being. Ant wars are swift, brutal, and basically don't stop because ants, fun fact, don't sleep like we humans do. They pause and take several multi-minute naps throughout the day before resuming wherever they left off. Ant wars literally do not sleep. And mechanically, this translates to some recurring quirks you'll notice in the AI. For example, when a food patch is sufficiently large enough, the Reds will always dedicate a single red soldier to stand guard over it. This can lead to a very amusing tactic, especially when Reds are low on numbers. You can set the yellow ant on a nearby pebble. This makes it very hard for enemies to attack you directly, and then you summon all your nestmates. They'll swarm around you, gang up, destroy the guard, which will cause the Reds to then dedicate a new guard to that same post. Repeat as long as needed, reaping all the rewards from the food pile as you do so, and thinning out enemy defenses. Oh yeah, let's touch on combat real quick because it comes up a lot and it's kind of bad. See, in the original version of the game, the caste you became upon your old yellow ant meeting its maker would determine your success via the dice roll. So it was luck-based, but soldiers had really high odds, especially versus any other type. However, in my SNES game, I discovered that it's a button-mashing minigame, and no, the game doesn't bother telling you this. I discovered this because, as a small Snek, I had an SNES Turbo controller, which if you set Turbo plus A setting meant I basically didn't lose fights if I was a soldier, but you could rapidly watch your energy bar drop as the yellow ant gets hungrier and hungrier from its repeated fights. Yeah, I don't like this. It's exhausting, and in the late game you can have 300 ants in each colony, and there's no way you're going to button mash through all that. Now, that does appear to be somewhere near or at a hard population cap. By then you're moving at about, a frame every couple seconds, because the SNES simply just can't handle having that many sprites. Around that point, the lawnmower becomes a welcome reprieve in its random vindictiveness. In fact, this appears to be a bit of an oversight by the game devs, because this makes full games a colossal pain to finish, let alone win. See, if you think you just need to go off the Red Queen and think you're gonna Metal Gear Solid your way in and do it yourself, yeah, go ahead and forget about that. Combat's a chore, remember? And for some reason, the ally AI just goes wonky in nest settings, not really appearing to follow you properly even if you call them. You can sit in the enemy nest and demand backup till you're blue in the face, but it doesn't change that most of the time they'll dip in, go whoops, wrong door, and then leave, leaving you in danger. Another thing that they're very prone to doing is just grabbing the first piece of food found in the enemy base, forgetting that you called them in the first place, and then just leaving for home. So yeah, that's frustrating. Also, assuming you can even get them past the food stores and the eggs, larvae, and pupae, which they'll cannibalize into green food pellets, though if you grab one of the eggs and take it home, it becomes a black egg. Oh yeah, fun fact. Both of these are factually accurate depending on the ant species in question. But assuming all of that, and they actually get into enemy territory and maybe even dispose of the red tyrant, you're not done. If even a single red ant remains on the map and then you leave for another black colony, the Red Queen just reappears, no rhyme or reason. Every single last one must be eradicated for the black ants to claim victory in that particular square of the map. But the problem is, when it's time for the mating flight, the placement happens essentially at random, completely outside your control. And while you can become a breeder ant, it's useless. You can't fly no matter what you do. The entire case is pointless for the player. It might as well not be in the game. And the nest expansion is aggressive. Even if you try to one-up them and spread out before the reds can, no dice. The game will cause them to just surge ahead, even where it makes no logistical sense because the way it tracks mating pairs is independent of any ants that exist on the field. So, there's these little cartoony triangles allowing you to control ant behavior in the ant case that are being created. Ultimately, this mechanic means that they are completely worthless. Besides, the game's automatic controls over them are always better than anything you can concoct as a stupid meatbag human. A full game run will almost always end in stalemate, and the save game sequence that is literally longer than installing some major MMOs. Seriously, I know this is a meme already, but this really should have either been corrected or removed from the game. For all the data it saves, it removes any kinds of customization or strategy, so a full game just kind of sucks. But this is where the SNES has a different game mode, and one that makes the game not only much faster paced, but infinitely more engaging. That being scenario mode. Told you I'd get there. In this game, the rules are significantly changed. Breeders are out, thank goodness, and you can focus exclusively on the one map at a time, each with its own unique designs and themes. In this mode, you also only get 3 lives as a yellow ant, so a game over is much easier and thus adds tension instead of frustration. And the Red Queen dying is actually a win condition, allowing you to progress to the next stage. It rewards taking the game's mechanics and using them in a faster and more significant portion of the game. This is such an improvement, though it can be over in just a short afternoon if you're good at the game. In fact, let me share with you a trick I discovered that might help. When it's not raining, you can dig really far down. Randomly along the way, you'll also find subtunnels. These actually link the red and black nests together, and you can use them to very quickly get under the red colony and sneak attack their queen, often resulting in an immediate or at least very quick, efficient win. But as said, if it's raining, you can't do this, and worse yet, you might get trapped below the water level, and then impotently watch your energy burn away as the water level doesn't quickly come back down and can cost you a life. Alright, I've been going on for a while now, because there's lots and lots of little nuances to this game, and while that would normally make me like the game more, it runs into the innate paradox. A lot of the time, you're just collecting green dots, or offing the occasional spider, or spending a lot of time just waiting for your idiot allies because their chances to win in battle vastly exceed yours without repetitive strain injuries. And while there's lots of fiddly bits to mess with and dial around to your liking, it's just better not to, as the game handles it better than you can. And ultimately, full game is a catastrophic mess. Without the novel cheat codes found in the PC version, this isn't fun to play, and it takes real-world 10 minutes just to save the game. Scenario mode is good, and likely the best part of the game, since it cuts out all that needless faffing about. But that mode ends up the opposite. Fun, but incredibly short. So how does it compare to the PC version? Well, it seems to have added a lot of good ideas. The aesthetic overhaul makes the game a lot more engaging to people who might not find bugs terribly cute, and the scenario mode is a big win. But the overall PC mode experience, especially when it comes to long-form gameplay, where the player has more direct impact, including options like being able to trigger nuptial flights and control where the colonies land, giving them a bigger competitive edge versus the RNG-based distribution. Well, also the PC port had a mode where it made all the ants and spiders tell dumb jokes and puns, so definitely the PC one is the true winner. Overall, I don't hate it, but it is a deeply flawed game. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that despite knowing all that, I still enjoy playing it. I like SimAnt, I think I always will. It's charming, it's fun, and it opened my eyes to the microcosm of activity and life that is the world of insects. I don't think I'd really be the same Snek without that benefit. If you get the chance to play SimAnt regardless of version, you really should. And that's the final word on this long-forgotten game, once a towering giant reduced to a mere bug of its former fated glory. And this has been the Snek, bringing this game under the magnifying glass for your enjoyment today. If you liked it, be sure to hit the like button to let me know. Leave a comment down below, telling me if you enjoyed this game as a kid too. I'd be curious to know if it was just me. And if you want more like this, including IndieX where I look at indie titles, Snek Suites where all the rules are thrown out and I just gush about a game I love, you can subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll never miss a one. It all goes a long way in helping me out and it's truly appreciated. Thanks for joining me here today, and while you'll never know what's coming next, I can tell you this, I will see you there.